The third type of relationship that we're going to talk about is a many-to-many relationship. Now, when we talked about one-to-many, we said 1:m. When we talked about one-to-one, it was 1:1. With a many-to-many, we don't say m:(m), we say m:(n). So just notice that a many-to-many relationship, it's written as m:(n). And so in real life, there are a lot of many-to-many relationships. So for example, if you think of a book, a textbook that you have, or some of your favorite books that you like to read, a book can have one or more authors. So if you think of a textbook, sometimes a textbook has several authors that worked on it. So here we would say the relationship between a book and an author is that a book can have many authors. Okay, and just to simplify it, you don't have to say one or more because that might confuse you. So just say a book can have many authors. If we look at the relationship backwards, an author actually writes many books. So many authors write many books. They don't just write one book, they write many books. So a book can have many authors. An author can write many books. And so that relationship between the book and the author would be considered a many-to-many relationship. Another example is if you are an employee and you're working on a project. Usually when you work on a project, you work in teams. So we would say an employee can work on many projects. Now that many can be 0, 1, or more, but we'll just say many for now to simplify things. So an employee can work on many projects. And at the same time, a project can be worked on or includes many employees. So that would be considered a many-to-many relationship. An employee works on many projects. A project includes many employees. And so that is considered a many-to-many relationship. Notice that both sides of the relationship have the many sign. Okay. Now, how would we represent this in a database? Now, many-to-many relationships can't be designed directly in a relationship, in a relational model. So we said that was kind of a limitation of the relational data model when we talked about it. And so the way we can represent it to bypass that we can't have a single table storing that many-to-many relationship, what we do is we create intermediate tables. And those intermediate tables, they're called junction tables or join tables. So here, for example, let's think about students. A student can be in many classes. So when you joined college, you signed up for several classes. So a student can be enrolled in many classes. So the relationship between a student and a class is that a student can join many classes. Now a class, you don't take a class alone, you take classes with other students. So a class contains many students. So the relationship between a student and a class or a course is that it's a many-to-many relationship. A student can take many classes, a class contains many students, a many-to-many relationship. Now, somehow you need to put a primary key as a foreign key in another table, and you can't do it like that. You can't go to the student table and say, the student, I'm going to take the student ID of the student and put it in the class table, because then the class table, if the class has 24 students, it will need to contain the ID of 24 students in there somehow. And we said we can't do that because every column has to be atomic. It has to be simple, a simple value. So I can't have a column that says students and just have like a list of them, student 2 and student 8 and student 10. Can't do that. At the same time, I can't take the primary key, which is class ID, and store it in the student table because the student is taking many classes. So I can't come here to the student and have a column that just lists all the classes they're taking and just list them, have a list, because we said columns have to have simple and atomic values. Okay, so I can't go take the primary key of one entity and store it in the other entity as its foreign key. So what do? We create a join table. We create an intermediary table where we store the primary key of both entities. So I take the student's primary key, I take the class's primary key, and I store them there. And I store them as foreign keys. Now, remember when we talked about creating those tables before, we said that we can create, like here, we have options for the primary key of this new table, this join table or junction table. We could make the student ID and class ID, we could make that the primary key of enrollments. Or we could have also just created one new column that just says like enrollment ID or something. But this is how you would design a many-to-many relationship.